The throne room of the Zareth Empire was a cathedral of alien majesty. Its walls shimmered with crystalline veins that pulsed like the heartbeat of some great beast, casting shifting colors across the vaulted ceiling. Great banners, woven from metals that gleamed like starlight, hung between towering pillars. The air was thick with incense made from exotic resins, sharp and sweet, designed to both impress and intimidate. Every corner spoke of power, of lineage, of the unbroken rule of a dynasty that had lasted longer than humanity's recorded history. At the far end of the vast chamber sat the emperor and empress upon twin thrones, carved not from stone, but from living rock, harvested from their homeworld's core. They loomed like living statues, their eyes glowing with the cold certainty of rulers who had never known defeat. The courtiers arrayed around them shifted nervously, their jeweled robes whispering as they whispered among themselves. Alien ambassadors, each from species older and prouder than humanity, stood in tense silence, and at the center of it all stood a single human captain. Elias Ward of the Terran Republic had been summoned by royal decree, though no one would tell him why. He wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, plain, practical, dark blue with silver trim. It looked woefully simple against the riot of colors and textures in the hall. Every eye weighed him, not as an honored guest, but as an anomaly. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage, barely 50 years past first contact. To the Zareth and their peers, humans were curiosities, adaptable, loud, and, in the eyes of some, dangerous. Elias stood tall, though he felt the weight of that silence pressing against him. He had served in battlefields back home before he'd become Earth's envoy. He had faced artillery fire, ambushes, and the unpredictable cruelty of war. But this was different. One wrong word in this place could damn not only him, but his entire species. He expected a diplomatic challenge, perhaps an accusation that humans had overstepped their bounds, or a veiled warning to keep Earth from growing too bold. But what came next was something even he could not have imagined. From the side of the throne, Princess Aralyn stepped forward. She was the only daughter of the Emperor. Her name whispered with awe and fear throughout the Empire. Her bearing was regal, her silver eyes sharp with intellect, her presence commanding. Clad in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid mercury, she was beauty made alien terrifying in her perfection. Suitors from across the galaxy had sought her hand, offering fleets, planets, and promises of power. Every one of them had been dismissed until now. Aralyn's gaze swept across the hall and locked onto Elias with startling intensity. For a moment, the human captain thought she must be looking past him. But no, her eyes pinned him as if no other being in the chamber existed. Then she raised her hand, her long fingers tipped with sharp claw-like nails, and pointed directly at him. The chamber stilled. It was as though the very air had been drawn from the room. And then, in a voice clear enough to pierce the silence, she spoke words that struck like thunder. "I choose him." The hall erupted in gasps, murmurs, even shouts. Elias's heart stuttered in his chest. The words were ritualistic heed, studied enough of Zareth culture to recognize them. They were not diplomatic, not casual. They were the ancient formula by which a princess declared her chosen mate. A declaration of bond, binding in tradition, almost sacred in weight. Elias froze. His instincts screamed at him to remain still, to say nothing, to avoid any sudden movement that might worsen the situation. He had never felt more out of place in his life. On the throne, Emperor Cathar leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. His voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Explain yourself," the courtiers hissed, their whispers like a storm. Some jeered. Others simply gawked. The Empress, usually composed and inscrutable, tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. But the princess did not waver. She stood with her hands still extended, her silver eyes blazing with defiance. "Father, mother, court, hear me," she declared, her voice unyielding. "I claim the human as my choice." The uproar that followed shook the hall. Some shouted in outrage, others laughed in disbelief. A few looked fearful as though some great shift had just begun. And in the middle of it all, Elias Ward stood unmoving, his pulse racing, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what had just happened. For in that single moment, before the throne of the greatest empire in the galaxy, humanity had been dragged into a storm it had never saw tanned, could not hope to escape those. 7 words had shattered the solemn order of the throne room. The uproar was immediate, a storm of voices colliding in disbelief, outrage, and fear. Courtiers rose from their seats, jewels glittering as they waved their arms in protest. Ambassadors from rival powers leaned toward one another, their eyes wide, already calculating what this might mean. Even the guards, bred to be stoic and silent, shifted uncomfortably, their reptilian faces betraying unease. The first voice to break through the chaos was Lord Valere, a hulking noble with scaled skin that glistened like obsidian. His voice hissed with venom as he pointed a claw toward Elias. This is madness, a human. A fragile, short-lived creature whose people still scrabble at the fringes of galactic society. Princess, you insult your bloodline? Others immediately joined the chorus. He cannot even breathe our air without aid. His species measures their lives in decades, not centuries. They have no dynasties, no history worthy of memory. To bind our empire to them is to debase us all. Each word was a strike meant to shatter Elias where he stood. He remained motionless, every instinct screaming at him to remain calm. He was not on Earth. He was not among allies. He stood in the heart of an empire that could erase his species with a single order. And yet Princess Erlyn did not flinch. She raised one hand, slender but commanding, and the chamber fell into uneasy silence. Her silver eyes swept across the nobles, cutting through their sneers. "You see weakness," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "You see fragility. You see only the surface." She turned, her gaze landing squarely on Elias. "But I see something you have all forgotten." Her words carried weight beyond defiance. They carried truth. "Humans endure," she continued. "They are young, yet they have clawed their way from a single world to the stars. They fight not because they are bred to, not because they are engineered to, but because survival demands it. Where others break under pressure, they grow stronger. Where others cling to tradition, they invent. Where others surrender, they adapt." Her eyes burned brighter now, a quiet fury building. "I do not choose him in spite of his humanity. I choose him because of it." A stunned silence followed. For the first time in the chamber, Elias felt the tide shift just slightly. A few eyes turned toward him with something other than contempt, curiosity, unease, perhaps even respect. Then came the Emperor's voice, deep, resonant, and absolute. "Aralen," the single word cracked across the silence like a thunderclap. "You speak boldly, but the weight of your words touches more than yourself. This is not a choice of the heart, it is a matter of empire." His burning eyes turned to Elias. The weight of that gaze was suffocating, like a mountain pressing down. "And you, human, what say you to my daughter's proclamation?" Ilias's throat was dry. His mind raced. He could hear his own heartbeat hammering in his chest. This was the moment, the choice that could mark Earth as ally or enemy, as equal or prey. Every instinct told him to tread carefully, but every fiber of his being rebelled against appearing weak. He drew a steadying breath and let his voice carry, clear and measured. "With respect. Your Majesty," he began, "I did not come here seeking this. I did not come to your throne to demand or to claim, but I will not deny who I am. Humanity may be young among the stars, but we are not strangers to struggle. We have never survived by bowing our heads. We endure, we adapt. And if your daughter sees something in me, it is not my place to deny her." The words were simple, but their echo lingered. The hall erupted once more, voices colliding in disbelief and rage. He dares speak as an equal. Arrogant ape. Does he not know where he stands? But over the din, one voice cut sharp and clear. It was Aralen. She stepped closer to Elias, her smile faint but fierce. "Do you see? Even with the throne of the empire before him, even with all of you arrayed against him, he does not cower." Her words stilled the chamber once more. Leaving only the heavy silence of disbelief, Elias stood, chest rising and falling with the weight of what he had just done. He had not begged, had not groveled, had not shrunk. He had stood as a human, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed even the emperor's face. If my daughter claims a human as her choice, then he must prove himself worthy. No words, no defiance, no speeches will sway me. Let the trial decide. A ripple of satisfaction spread through the court. At last they would see the human broken, humbled before the empire. To survive the trial was rare, even for Zareth heir's children trained from birth in combat, strategy, and endurance. No outsider had ever dared. None had walked out unscathed. Many had never walked out at all. Elias Ward was given no time to prepare. Guards escorted him from the throne room into the labyrinth's antechamber. His weapons were stripped away. His uniform remained, already worn from his years of service. Now it seemed thin armor for what awaited him. The labyrinth loomed beyond a set of towering gates. It was a live wall shifting with a slow, grinding groan, stone and flesh woven together by alien biotechnologies. Inside, predators stalked. The Empire had bred them for millennia, perfecting them as instruments of trial and terror. One of the guards sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You'll last minutes, human." If you're lucky. Ilias's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had learned long ago that bravado did not win battles, preparation did. And though he had none of the weapons he trusted, he still had the one thing no alien here understood: human adaptability. The gates creaked open. A roar of alien voices from the spectators echoed behind him. The Emperor, Empress, and Princess sat high above, watching from the royal gallery. Elias stepped into the labyrinth. The gates closed. The trial began. The first sound was a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the stone. Elias crouched low, eyes scanning, ears straining. Shadows shifted as bioluminescent veins pulsed along the walls, casting eerie light. He moved cautiously, every step silent, every sense on edge. The beast struck fast, a chitinous creature, 8 limbs driving it forward, jaws splitting wide enough to swallow his head whole. Its hide gleamed with natural armor, and its eyes burned with engineered hunger. Elias dove aside, feeling the rush of air as jaws snapped shut where he had stood. Instinct took over. He scrambled, snatching a loose shard of stone broken from the wall. The creature lunged again. Elias sidestepped, ramming the shard into a seam between its armored plates. The beast shrieked, ichor spraying hot against his arm. It thrashed, but Elias pressed in, driving the shard deeper until it collapsed in a twitching heap. He didn't cheer, didn't pause. He only breathed, harsh and steady, and whispered to himself, "One down." Don't stop moving. The labyrinth twisted endlessly, walls shifting, corridors collapsing and reforming. It was not a test of strength alone. It was a test of will. Hours blurred together. Elias fought more creatures, a serpentine predator with venomous fangs, a swarm of insectoid hunters that tried to overwhelm him with numbers, a stalking beast that hunted in silence, forcing him to set crude traps with scraps of debris. Every battle left him bloodied. His uniform tore, his body screamed in pain, but he endured. He improvised, using the labyrinth itself as a weapon. He toppled unstable walls onto his foes, jammed sharp bones into weak spots, even lured one predator into devouring another. Where a Zareth noble might have relied on training, ritual, or honor, Elias fought dirty. He fought like a human, using whatever came to hand, refusing to die, refusing to yield up in the gallery. The court watched in stunned silence. The nobles who had jeered were now whispering uneasily. The emperor's gaze never left Elias, his expression unreadable. And Princess Arlen. Her lips curved into a smile sharp enough to cut glass. At last, Elias staggered into the final chamber. His body was battered, his arms streaked with blood, some his, some not. He barely had the strength to stand. The final beast awaited him. It was larger than the rest, monstrous amalgamation of scale, claw, and muscle. Its roar shook the chamber, rattling the very walls. Elias had nothing left but his will. No weapons, no strength to spare. Only his mind. The creature charged. Elias didn't run. He stood his ground, watching, calculating. At the last possible moment, he dove aside straight into the wall of shifting stone. The beast followed, slamming into the unstable structure with all its weight. The wall collapsed in a cascade of rock and flesh, burying the monster beneath tons of debris. The chamber went silent. Elias lay gasping, every muscle screaming but alive. Somehow, impossibly, alive. When the gates opened, the roar of the crowd was deafening. Not cheer shock, disbelief, fear. The human had survived. He staggered into the throne room once more, bloodied and broken, but unbowed. The court stared as though at a ghost. The emperor's expression had shifted from disdain to something closer to respect and caution. Aralan's smile blazed like a star. She rose, her voice triumphant. "Do you see now? He is human, and that is enough." The trial had ended. But the storm it unleashed was only beginning. Elias Ward's survival reverberated through the palace like a seismic shock. The courtiers who had expected his bloody defeat now whispered in uneasy tones, their earlier gears replaced with something else wariness. The trial was not designed to be survived by outsiders. Even Zareth heirs often emerged broken or disfigured. Yet the human had walked out, battered and bloodied, but still standing, and that meant something. To the Empire's nobility, it meant a disruption of the old order. If a human and upstart from a young species barely 50 years into galactic politics could survive the trial, then perhaps their place in the galaxy was not as lowly as they had believed. To the military, it raised uncomfortable questions about Earth's soldiers, and to the rivals who sought Princess Erlin's hand, it was an insult sharpened to the bone. The court was divided. Some, like Lord Vaylor, were outraged. This farce cannot stand. He cheated the labyrinth with tricks, not strength. To bind our empire to his kind would be suicide. Others spoke more carefully, whispering to one another. Perhaps there is use in such adaptability. Their species thrives where logic says it should not. The emperor convened his inner circle that very night. High-ranking nobles, generals, and advisors crowded into the war chamber, the walls lit with cold blue light. Maps of the empire's territories glowed in the air, threads of power stretching across star systems. "If my daughter binds herself to this human," Kythar said, his deep voice carrying across the chamber, "then Earth becomes entangled with Zareth's destiny. War may follow. Do we trust them to bear such weight?" Reports were presented, each one more unsettling than the last. Humanity's fleets were small, yes, but their designs were crude in ways that confounded enemy predictions. Their ships fought as though each was a puzzle designed to be solved on the battlefield itself. Their soldiers, though lacking genetic enhancements, fought with an intensity few could match. One admiral described an encounter at the frontier. "We observed a Terran unit besieged by forces 3 times their number. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They fought until the enemy brokened. Then they rebuilt their defenses with the enemy's wreckage. It is unnerving." The Empress, who had remained silent during much of the uproar, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the noise. "Perhaps the girl sees further than us. Perhaps she is chosen not out of rebellion, but out of instinct. What better bond for our empire than with those who will fight until the void itself yields?" The chamber fell quiet. Even the emperor did not dismiss her words outright. Meanwhile, Elias sat alone in his quarters, his wounds cleaned but aching. The weight of what had happened pressed down on him harder than any beast in the labyrinth. He had never asked for this. He had come as a diplomat, a soldier representing a fledgling republic, not as some chosen mate of an alien princess. The trial had proven something he wasn't sure what, but it had also made Earth a target. Every suitor Aralan had rejected now had a reason to despise him. Every rival empire now had a reason to fear humanity. And the Zareth people themselves would question, scheme, plot around this declaration for decades to come. When the door to his quarters opened, he expected guards. Instead, it was Aralyn, She entered without hesitation, her presence filling the room like a sudden fire. Her eyes gleamed, and for the first time since the throne room, Elias saw something other than defiance in her expression. There was certainty that unnerved him more than any monster in the labyrinth. "You look troubled," she said softly. Elias rose, wincing from the pain. "Troubled. That's one way to put it. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her lips curved faintly. "Of course. I chose." He stepped closer, frustration edging into his voice. "You didn't just choose me. You dragged my entire species into this. You've painted a target on Earth's back. The court, your rivals, the galaxy. They won't just sit quietly while a princess binds herself to a human. Do you understand that?" Aralen did not flinch. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Yes, and that is precisely why I chose you." Her words struck him silent. She continued, her voice firm. "My people have grown complacent. They believe themselves untouchable. They sneer at the young species clawing their way upward. But I have studied your kind. I have seen the way you fight, the way you endure. You do not survive because the galaxy permits it to survive because you refuse anything else. That fire, that defiance, is what my empire needs." Elias shook his head, still struggling. "You're gambling the fate of your people and Manan instinct?" "No," she said, her eyes burning. "I am placing my F." The throne room, once filled with noise, now carried only silence. The proclamation still hung in the air like a living thing, heavy, undeniable. The alien Princess Aria, daughter of the Zalthian High Monarchs, had not wavered. She had pointed, she had declared, and her eyes never left the human. Marcus Hale. For a heartbeat, Marcus thought the silence would stretch into eternity. But then came the first ripple. The nobles erupted, their voices sharp and venomous. The courtiers shouted over one another in disbelief. A princess of the empire had chosen a human, species considered nothing more than an upstart nuisance on the galactic fringe. Some demanded punishment for Marcus. Others screamed for annulment of her words. Yet their outrage seemed only to strengthen Serenia's resolve. Marcus, standing alone at the center of the storm, felt like prey in a den of predators. He was trained as a soldier, not a diplomat. He had seen battle, blood, and fear, but nothing prepared him for this moment. Where the fury of an empire now weighed on his shoulders, still, he did not flinch. He stood tall, eyes steady, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing fear. The king himself rose from the throne, his towering frame cloaked in ceremonial armor that gleamed like liquid metal. His voice rumbled low, silencing the nobles with a single command. "Serenia, explain yourself." The princess met her father's gaze, and though her body trembled, her voice remained firm. "I have chosen Marcus Hale, a human. Because where others saw weakness, I saw strength. Where others saw fear, I saw courage. He risked his life for Manat, for reward, not for favor, but because it was right. That is a quality no crown, no lineage, no empire can grant." The queen leaned forward, her jeweled eyes narrowing as she studied Marcus. "And you, human? Do you accept this choice? Do you understand what it means?" Marcus hesitated only a moment before answering. "I didn't save your daughter for politics or power. I did it because I couldn't stand by and watch someone die when I could help. If her choice means standing beside her, then I'll stand. Even if the galaxy laughs. Even if it hates me for it." The honesty in his words rippled through the hall. The nobles were unsettled, some scoffing, others falling into uneasy silence. Truth had a strange weight it could not be dismissed as easily as politics. The king and queen exchanged a long, unreadable look. For centuries, their empire had thrived on tradition, on alliances made through bloodlines and treaties. And yet here stood their daughter, daring to shatter it all for a single human. The queen was the first to speak, her voice like ice breaking. "Then so it shall be. The princess has spoken, and our law is clear. Her proclamation binds her choice. The empire will not rescind it. But know this, Marcus Helu are not just chosen. You are now a piece of our destiny. Fail her, fail us, and your world will burn. A hush fell again. It was done, irrevocable. The nobles seethed, but none dared to challenge the throne's decree. Some whispered of scandal, others of opportunity. If humanity had managed to carve its way into the Empire's bloodline, perhaps they were not to be underestimated. The fracture lines of doubt began to spread in the court. Marcus could feel the weight of history turning. Serenia stepped forward, her hand reaching for his. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to soften, clasping her hand in his own. Their union was not of convenience or manipulation, but of choice. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was real. Beyond the throne room, the galaxy churned with tension. Rivals of the Empire saw weakness. Allies saw confusion. Humanity, watching from its distant systems, was stunned. One of their own had been bound to an alien throne. Some called it madness. Others called it destiny. Marcus did not know what the future would hold. War, perhaps. Rebellion, likely. But as he looked into Serenia's unwavering gaze, he realized something vital. Humanity's story in the galaxy had just shifted forever. No longer outsiders, no longer dismissed as primitives, they were now tied to the heart of an empire, and it had all begun with a single moment. A finger pointed, a proclamation spoken, and a choice that no one could unmake.